Welcome to the Addiction Connection podcast, connecting the hope of the gospel with the heart of addiction. I'm Mark Shaw, and I'm joined with Jim Quigley. And
hello, everyone.
We are talking about Dopesick. This is a show on Hulu, a Hulu original. And Jim, you told me last time, I think October of 2021 is when it came
first episode.
out. And we have some critiques, but we want to say just right off the bat that we're not recommending you watch it. There are stomach-turning things. There are themes that are not very godly and biblical, and there's language that's horrific and stomach-turning and all of that. So we're not saying watch it, but I know that people watch that stuff, and some people can filter that better than others. So we did watch the episode, and we thought there were some things in there that we wanted to critique and analyze and talk about. And Jim has some really great insights, so I'm looking forward to interviewing him and picking his brain a little bit. And before we do that, let's read scripture. I've got a verse pulled up here. It should be familiar to most people who are in the Addiction Connection family. It's Colossians 2:8. See to it that no one takes you captive by what? Philosophy, empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of the world, and not according to Christ. And that's the framework for which we'll dive into this second episode on Dopesick. And there's a book you can read by Beth Macy. I actually have it on my shelf. I didn't even realize it, so I need to read it. I guess somebody told me read the book a long time ago, and I bought it, but it hasn't made it to my reading eyes yet. But I will. But I really like this episode in terms of, and this whole series in terms of the acting. You've got Michael Keaton. You've got other actors. I mean, it's really well done cinematically. From my naive perspective, and I'm not going to critique them on any of that, but I just thought it was well done, and I think you did too, Jim.
I think it's well done. Speaking from somebody that, I've mentioned before that, came from, I was a pain pill, addict. I did lots of pain pills, and well, this is a fictional story being told about a real thing, right?
Right.
They really do a good job of capturing, especially in this episode, capturing the nuance of pain pill addiction. It's almost like reliving it in a way. I mean, my heart's not being, drawn towards or anything while we're going through this, but I'm remembering, wow, that was very accurate, about how a lot of this stuff worked. And, so they do a fantastic job with that. So.
Well, this episode 2 is called Breakthrough Pain. And I just thought that was brilliant. I'll let you take the lead and talk about how it starts. And that guy, the Richard Sackler character, he does a really good job. I mean, he's a good actor. He's got that sour face all the time, and he looks like that character, the cold miser on the old Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer cartoon. Yeah, I don't know if you remember Heat Miser and Cold Miser, but he's got his mouth, he's always got a frown. I have to pull my hands to get my face to do that. But he's a really good actor. But it starts out with him and the family, which is, it's fiction. So we got to tell people we're critiquing the fictional account here. We're not critiquing history, facts. We're not even going there, but we're critiquing the fictional account as presented on the Hulu episode number 2 of Dopesick. So take it away, Jim. Breakthrough Pain.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question about the Richard Sackler character. Do you ever like think in his portrayal that he's, they portray him as like this like socially awkward, salesman, that's trying to bring a drug to market for profit, right? But there's almost like his portrayal of the character is almost like does he really think he is doing something good? You kind of, there's moments, there's moments you're like, does he think this is like he's really, changing the world, or because that's what's, because you come away like, does this guy believe what he's saying, or is he just saying that because that's the narrative he needs in order to like when the problem, like that's how this episode opens up. The problem is that the 12 hours is not people. It's supposed to be a 12-hour pain relief, and it's not lasting 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Dum. First big problem. And so they're having like a little, office session. They're like, hey, what are we going to do about this? This is a problem. Right. And, he's like, we'll figure this out. Don't worry. We're going to figure this out. We are going to continue to help people with their pain. And this is like what I was saying just a minute ago. This is something that I don't think if you've not lived and abused these pills, this was very accurate concerning my experience with them. And I've shared this before. The first time I took a pain pill, one of these pain pills, they show people like you have like this Superman like effect, like you feel fantastic, like you can change the world, like you can do anything. Like they show the guy with his arm, remember he couldn't lift his arm, he's like, Doc, I'm bowling now, and right. And you feel fantastic, and it's just a little bit, it doesn't take much.
You said first time you took one, you took a half, right?
Yes, I took a half. I took a half. Now, just to be clear, Oxy was the original, and then there was another drug called Roxy, which is the one I primarily abused. So I took a half of a Roxy the first time I took one, and I felt nauseous. Now I took it in an illicit way. I didn't just ingest the pill. Right. I crushed it up into powder form, and I snorted it. And within 30 minutes, I was feeling very, very nauseous. But like I said before, within 6 months, I could ingest 20 to 30 of those things in a day. Wow. Now that's somebody that's pushing it. That's not like taking it because I have chronic pain and I'm addressing it and slowly go down the rabbit trail. That's somebody that was abusing it to abuse it. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't take long for you to build up a tolerance to these pills, and you find yourself taking astronomical amounts, and it doesn't even give you the euphoric effect anymore that it once did, because your body is just so tolerant to it. But yeah, but like, how did they? This has to do with how plentiful that they became. This is the beginning of it, and the episode ends with the granddaddy of the Oxy family, and we'll talk about that when we get to the end. But these are the 10 milligram pills that we're talking about, and people are supposed to take one of those every 12 hours, and they're getting reports people waking up in excruciating pain. And what is the solution to this? They come up with a justification for doubling the dose. And
problem solved.
And this, for those that are watching, I had one friend said that he and his wife are watching this along with our podcast so that they can do this with us. So that's great. But for those that are watching this or have watched this, it's very important to really pay attention, because while, again, it's a fictional show, this is, I don't know how to say this. I mean, in my opinion, this is some factual stuff. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Shaw. Okay. But, they need a justification for doubling the dose. So they come up with a justification called breakthrough pain. Okay. And they tell everybody,
It's a brand new concept. Brand new. Nobody's
brand new.
ever, they made it up.
And Richard Sackler explains what they're doing. There's like, hey, look, you remember when Librium was on the market and then we were bringing Valium to the market? Well, for those of you guys that aren't amateur pharmacologists like us, Librium and Valium are in the benzodiazepine family, right? So we call them benzos. So Librium was around before they came up with Valium, and in order to sell Valium instead of Librium, they came up with a justification, and they called it psychic tension, right?
Completely made up term. They made it up. They created it to sell Valium. Yes.
Yeah. Saying, why do you need to take Valium instead of Librium? Because Valium helps with psychic tension.
Yeah.
Not Librium, which is just like Mark said, it's a made up concept. And people were like, well, why do they do this? Okay. And this is something that is factual. Okay. So when a company brings a drug to market, they have a patent on that drug for a period of time. And then when that patent runs out, then they can make that drug generically, and any drug company can make it and sell it. Mm-hmm. So if I bring a drug to market, I'm the only one that can sell it because of my patent, but my patent is only lasts a certain amount of time.
Right.
So I'm making lots of money, and in order to plan to replace that money, because you're not going to have that level of income anymore once you can produce a generic form of this drug, right? So you need to have a replacement come in, and they do this all the time.
No, they do.
All the time. I mean, all the time. Like, how many SSRIs do we have on the market?
Yeah.
And, how many of all kinds of drugs that do essentially the same thing do we have in the market? And they
modify it genetically, or they add a little aspirin or something to it to make it a different drug, but with a different name. But that's what you're saying. Yeah. Continue.
Exactly. So, here it is, essentially the same type of drug, a benzodiazepine. And how are we going to sell it? Psychic tension. This helps with psychic tension. Again, like you said, totally made up term. So here we have a pain pill. And they have a little bit different problem. They have the patent, right? They have the patent, but their drug is failing to deliver the promise, right? What is the promise? It's not addictive, right? It's not addictive. And
less than 1%. That's what they put out there. Less than 1% become addicted.
And they were able to get an FDA label put on it that it's less addictive because of the what's the system called? The
cotton.
The cotton system. The cotton time release system, which existed before, and it was in the cancer patients. They gave that pain medication to cancer patients in the cotton system. So the cotton system is going to work with everyday pain, right, in a time release fashion. But there's a big difference between a healthy individual that's functioning during the day, that's taking a narcotic for regular pain, an opiate narcotic, than somebody that's dying from cancer, that's probably, in a hospital bed taking, they're not going to get the build up tolerance as fast as somebody that's pushing through and working every day. I mean, so they're having this problem, and they don't need to sell a new drug. They need to figure out how to maintain the image of this drug, not addictive. It is appropriate for moderate pain to prescribe to people. And the cotton system, they can't say the cotton system is failing an individual. They can't say that they're building a tolerance. They have to say they're having this thing called breakthrough pain. And it's totally made up. And it's not the only made up thing that comes with this. I'm not going to spoil it because I know it's in a later episode, but they make up something that still exists today in your triage with every patient that goes to a doctor, and that's coming up soon. But so this
cliffhanger, you're leaving them, you're giving a cliffhanger. That's good. People tune in. Smart, Jim. Keep going. I'm sorry.
No. While this show is highlighting them making up a condition to justify selling more and prescribing more of this drug, This is not uncommon. This is everyday practice in that world.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear later on in the episode when they're questioning the marketing tactics of drug companies. Do you remember what's said about the regulation of the marketing on drug companies?
I don't know what you're.
They're asking like how can they do these videos? Because the video is part of this. That video they made where all the people are saying that the pain medication, but they won't mention oxy. They just keep saying the pain medication has changed my life and all that stuff. So they go to the FDA, and they're like, who regulates these commercials from drug companies to make sure they're being honest? And they're on the honor system.
Yeah,
that's how it's regulated. They're on the honor system.
Yeah,
so they have to police themselves. So imagine that. Here's this is a good biblical concept to talk about. Okay, people are not inherently good. If you're a Christian, you don't believe people are inherently good. People are fallen and need a new heart, right? And what is a root of all kinds of evil? What is a root of all kinds of evil?
Yeah,
money.
Love of money. Yeah.
The love of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have corporations, right? That are not necessarily being run by outwardly professing Christians. They're being run by people that are there to make money, right?
Yeah.
And they're bringing things to market. How do they make money? They make money off of selling these drugs to people.
Yeah.
So if they need to increase their sales, they need to bring these drugs to market. They're going to push the limits when it comes to how they do that. And it shouldn't shock people. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is biblical. It shouldn't shock people that they will flat out make up something in order to justify what they think is right. Just like you were saying in the Colossians passage, this is their wisdom, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know. Who's the we? The people that are subject to profit from this, right? And this is where you can't figure out. They say they paint Richard Sackler in this way to where, is that his mindset? Where he's like, I'm just trying to profit from people, or does he really think he's helping people? And either way, he is the one coming up with this in his own mind and heart, right? He's saying, this is what is good for you, and I'm going to give it to you, and I will go to any length I can and push it to any length I can in order to do it. And what a dangerous thing that our government literally said, well, we'll let them police themselves because
honor system.
I mean, that's scary, man.
It is. Well, there's a lot of scary stuff in this, and the breakthrough pain is the name of the episode. And I just thought this was so brilliant for them to say, Richard Sackler is wanting to be better than his uncle Arthur. That's I think they're insinuating that's a driving force in his life. And because even in this
100%.
episode, I think it was his dad or one of the advisors that says, Richard Arthur's dead, like, what are you trying to prove? Like, he died in the 80s, but he mastered the promotion of Valium, Arthur did, as a household name for everyday anxieties to the common housewife at that time. They say that in the show and in other places you read. But they're, this goes on today, and I can't say how. I can't give people examples because we'll get censored. I've been censored twice, and you can't give specifics and say how. I just read an article yesterday about how they changed the definition of a word that we say every single day now in our culture. And I can't say the word because we'll get censored. We're not in a free country anymore, folks. And so I can't say what it is, but they changed the definition of what it is so that it would fit their narrative. And that's what this is: breakthrough pain, psychic tension. The doctor, Michael Keaton, Dr. Finnick says, I've never heard of breakthrough pain. I've never heard of that when the sales rep selling them on it. Well, yeah. Oh, yeah, Doc. Oh, man. Yeah. You got to get with it. There's new times. We're not in the 1800s anymore prescribing morphine. You got to prescribe our drug. I mean, he says something like that in this
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah.
So,
What do doctors know? They know that opiate narcotics are dangerous for prolonged use. They know that, right?
yeah,
They
right.
know that for sure, and they are being convinced they're being brainwashed in a sense by this company by saying no, that doesn't fit this drug. This drug is different. Yeah, because he does say, he's like, you know what, I'm not going to double dose. I'm just going to go something else. I'm going to go back to something else.
Right. Right.
And they're like, no, you don't want to do that, Doc. You don't want to do that.
No.
But you know what? That happens right after that drug rep, the male, I forgot his name, but he's conflicted too. Like you remember he's talking to that girl that is just the epitome of,
she's awful. Yeah.
No, she's awful.
Terrible.
And he's like, man, and she's like, look, the 20 sells more than the 10. She goes, so we'll get bigger paychecks. And she says, hey, look, she's like, there's no perfect drug. And she's like helping him. Like they're like at the table. He's like, we're just going to tell him to double it. She's like, hey, look, bigger paychecks. No drug is perfect. Stop thinking so much about it. Right.
Yeah.
We're just doing
that's not your job.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
Job. And he goes along with it. He's like, yeah, okay. And how many times can you have you seen great bondage and sin happen with you have that one person just kind of helping you justify it along the way, and you got this girl doing that for this guy, and ultimately it's a fictional story, but ultimately the real damage that, even though this is a fictional account, these things did happen, right? I mean, it is of record that the memo that this was non-addictive. It is of record that the FDA put this special label. It is of record that breakthrough pain was made up. I mean, these are all part of the record, and these were told to doctors that I really believe Phoenix. A lot of Phoenix, they were struggling. Like, are you sure about this?
Yeah. We said the girl, but she's a sales rep, and it shows you the power of her talking to this other sales rep, Billy, this young guy, who you gotta like him. I mean, and he does. He does a good job of showing his conflict, with some of his tension. But she's talking him into it and saying, it's just your job, sell it. And then he goes like the next scene, and he's selling Dr. Phoenix, Michael Keaton, on this drug and this. It's breakthrough pain, Doc. You got to give him 20 milligrams, and he kind of talks him into it. They show him bribing the receptionist at Dr. Phoenix's office to get in. Yeah. And Dr. Phoenix knows what's going on. He's like, if he's going to bribe you, make him bribe you with something really good. He's like, hey, he's helping her, like, get more out of the sales rep. And then the sales rep sits down with him and says, hey, we've got a trip to Arizona, and you can come and talk to pain experts and learn about the drug and have a great time. He's selling him on, having a great time. That's when he says, bring your wife. And Dr. Phoenix says she died of ovarian cancer. But then that this pain speaker at the Arizona conference was a help to him in some way, and he wants to talk to him. So that's kind of introduced in this.
Yeah, those articles when his wife was dying, he read those articles and brought them. Yeah, and I did skip like an internal thing. And again, this is, I don't know if it's true, but you have I guess the main reporter to Sackler and his team about the drug, and he said, we're not going to clarify to people that oxy is stronger than morphine. We're just going to go ahead and not clarify that. And Richard was like, well, good. Yeah, we don't need to clarify that,
Yeah, right.
We don't need to make that clear for people. So,
right.
Again, I don't know how true that is, but you remember right after that in my notes, the prosecutors are hunting down people that participated in this video, and they get to they get to the main doctor, and all these steps along the way, convincing doctors that this is okay to give for moderate pain to people. It's not addictive and whatnot. And pain is people relieving people's pain is a moral good. That is a moral good. You get that one video from that one moment with the doctor that had a lot of these patients that were in the video, and he said, "My job is to cure pain, and I will use everything in my arsenal to do it." You remember that? It's like, I don't care what happens. They just got finished telling them, like, you already have one or two patients that have died from drug overdoses. Another guy that we just visited about to die. And they visited that one lady that tells the story of her tolerance. She started off with a 10 milligram pill, and she was up to 120 milligrams in no time, you know, and it destroyed her life. She had to wean herself off of it.
Yeah.
Lost everything.
Boy, there are lots of interesting angles with this, and we haven't even talked really about the whole assistant DAs. Is that what you call it? Those guys, and they go back and forth to like modern day for them, which is I think 2006 or 8 or somewhere in there, but they're prosecuting, they're taking their case to court, and you're hearing people testify, and they're blending that in, which I thought was pretty good. I mean, it's hard for me sometimes to keep up with that. Like, where are we in the story? But now rewatching it, it's like, oh, okay, that's what was going on. You kind of have to watch it twice, which is terrible because some of the stuff is not good, but
at least you know where to fast forward.
More. What's that? Yeah, you can fast forward and just the language. I just wish shows wouldn't have such bad language, I mean, they don't have to say some of these words, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I think they could do better, but that's developing that whole thing too. Do you have any thoughts about these assistant and they're starting to introduce in this episode that these guys who are going after Purdue, they're meeting resistance, but guess where the resistance comes from, Jim? Tell us. It's a little surprising to some, not to me, not to you, but to some people.
Yeah, it's coming
Where's
from
the resistance?
Coming from the higher ups. But you remember that you remember the first resistance. They had it wrong. Like they have that interview with James Comey, and he's like, "Why are you going after the chicken guy?" And they're like, "What are you talking about?" They thought that they were going to get shut down, right? But Comey had it all misunderstood. He was told to bring him in about, going after Purdue. Probably, cause I think later on we know there's more resistance, but he was told to bring him in because they're going after Purdue. And I guess Comey didn't get the memo that which Purdue they were talking about, so he brought him in there to spank him about the chicken guy.
Yeah.
And then when they said, "No, you got the whole thing wrong," he's like, "Oh, okay, well, go make your case," But
a little foreshadowing of what's to come too.
Yeah. Little foreshadowing. And, there was this interesting, the one guy is obviously dealing with cancer. We know that. We find that out in this episode. And he's got to have an operation. And he's like, "I'll just be out a week." And the other guy, we're learning more about, he's another weird Christian fundamentalist, right? Because he offers to pray for the guy, and the guy's like, "Yeah, that's not my thing," but he prays for him anyway. And, why are you highlighting that? And you remember when the first episode, he's with his wife and children, and he's praying at the meal before anybody eats and everything. And I thought they were just trying to make him, they keep hammering each, episode 1 and 2. They keep presenting Christianity in this kind of fundy way that is just kind of makes my stomach turn. Like the mom, the girl telling her mom, "Mom, I got to tell you, ever since I was a kid, I've been attracted to women." And like she goes through this huge reveal, comes out of the closet to her mother, and her mother's response was, "Were you saying something to me?" This really cold, Like, I'm just totally going to ignore everything you just said, and just gives her that look like, don't ever say it again, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I'm saying Christians have handled things like that very terribly.
Sure.
But that's not, I don't think that's fair to, I mean, there's an agenda why they're presenting people like that in the show. And I'll get to that
and they made
probably later.
And they made that moment the moment that the girl, Betsy, she reveals all that to her mom, and mom says, you know, were you talking to me? You know, and they made that the moment that Betsy kind of goes off the rails, or at least starts to go really just, I'm out of here. I'm done with this. I'm going to, you know, go live my life of homosexuality. Yep. And as a viewer, you know, if you're not a Christian, you're watching, you're like, yeah, if your mom's going to ignore you and dismiss you and treat you so horribly, abandon all that, you know, get out of that family and those beliefs and those cold, you know, I don't blame you. Go live you, be you. And as a believer, you're like, darn it. I mean, this mom is being characterized as wicked and you know, and then, he says, hey, I'll pray for you. The guy's got prostate cancer.
Right.
I mean, wouldn't you say,
absolutely.
Pray for me, even if you're like atheist. I mean, what does it hurt? You've got prostate cancer. And he goes, no, I'm not into that. And then he prays at the family dinner. And, but I think too, they're setting it up that he's a wholesome guy and he can't be bought too. So I think they're introducing it for later on that, this is a guy that he can't be bought because he has values and morals. He's doing it for a higher standard. So there is that maybe is redemptive, but you're right. They're portraying Christianity in a very negative way, which is why we wanted to talk about this too and say, hey, Christians aren't like this show. So if you're watching, you're not in a church and let us help you find a good church, a good family of believers to be around, because there are wholesome, godly Christians, and there are people like they're portraying for sure. But that's in every church, every business, you got good and bad apples and all of those. But as believers, we understand, like you said, Jim, we're all born as sinners. We all need Christ. We all need his forgiveness, and we live in that. I was teaching forgiveness last night in a biblical counseling session and going through it and just reminding myself how rich forgiveness is. The teaching, like in Luke 17, where Jesus, says, if your brother sins against you, rebuke him. You've got to go and tell him. But a rebuke is not like, hey, Jim, you hurt me and you owe me an apology. That's not a rebuke. A rebuke is, Jim, I'm concerned about you. You sinned against me, and I'm concerned about you and your relationship with God. That's a rebuke. Not, you better get it right with me and you owe me an apology. And that makes it all about me. A rebuke is making it about you and your relationship with God. And so that's forgiveness, and that's what we live in. And we need that because we do sin against each other, sometimes unintentionally, but sometimes very intentionally. We get upset about stuff. And so, so it's unfortunate that they hammer on this fundamentalist negative thing, which we would say, if that's the way Christianity looks, we don't want it either. But that's not the way it is, at least in our churches, in our circles. So praise the Lord.
I wanted to point out real quick that visual, that moment where it's a fast forward where Rosario, the is she a DEA agent? Yeah.
Yes, she's DEA, and at some point she moves to the diversion division.
She's in that cafe and looking at that pain clinic, and you see the line outside. And then she goes in. And the woman's like, fill the paperwork out, and she's like, but you can't see a doctor today or something. She's like, well, I'm in intense pain. And she's like, I'm sorry, And she walks out of there, and you have this sense that this is and I want to tell people how real that scene is, and it's actually even worse. Broward Boulevard in Fort Lauderdale. I can say this because I know it, right? They had so many pain clinics up and down Broward Boulevard, and you go to you go to the parking lot and there were you look at license plates and they were from all out of state. People were driving to Broward Boulevard to go to, and you would go to these clinics and you had to pay a guy to get in the door. You had someone standing at the front door of the pain clinic and you had to pay them to get in the door. You had to pay the receptionist to get in to see the doctor. You had to pay to see the doctor, and then they filled your prescription at the clinic itself, so you didn't go to a pharmacy. So it was all in-house, all cash, and that was that's what those things turned into. So that line around I remember going into the doctor myself and looking out the hallway one time because I was going to go to the restroom, and there was 8 office doors down the hallway, and there was someone sitting out of each one of them, looking down the hall, waiting for the doctor. Because in the scene, you may not have caught this, but everybody that's in that waiting room is dope sick. They are all dope sick.
You're right,
and they're all like, you know. And then that little boy goes to steal a script from that lady, and that's when we find out that half the kids in school are taking these things, and that was real. You know, that was the reality of this thing. Kids, he said, we get the script and we take half and sell half. You know, that's what we do. And half the people are doing it. And it was just viewing that, and it just brought back some memories again of how powerful this stuff was. It was just unbelievable. And the last thing I'll say is back to the girl that is moved in. You know, what people may not understand in the show is when she wakes up and she, at the last scene, she wakes up and she runs outside and she begins to vomit. She's vomiting because she's withdrawing already. She has gotten she's gotten so tolerant of these medications, and that's what would happen. Right. Like if you were that tolerant, you were taking larger doses of it. Once it started to come out of your system, you would get physically ill. You would throw up. And she goes into the truck and she takes 40 milligrams. She doubles her own dose. And then the show closes out with her sitting there and starting to go drift off into the euphoria of, you know, it's the pain pill euphoria. And you know, it's the beginning. If you didn't catch it, it's the beginning of the end for that girl at that moment, because now she was taking it for pain, and now she's going to start taking it for the euphoric effect that she's starting to feel in that camper after taking that large dose. Yeah. Right after her mom ignored her, you know, and she was trying to confess, and and that's a great point. I mean, you know, I love that you're bringing your personal experiences and stuff into this. And I know it's not triggering you and making you want to go back to that, but it does bring up some emotions and some, you know, some memories and stuff. I worked honestly, Mark, when she was that, when I saw that facial expression sitting at the table, I thought to myself, this girl must have used opiates at some point in her life, because that facial expression, it didn't trigger me to like want to use, but I knew exactly she did it perfectly. Like, she did it perfectly, where someone like me is like going, that's exactly what it looks like. That's exactly what it looks like. Right. That's why this show is so well done. I mean, you know, we've already expressed what we don't like about it, but there are some realistic kind of presentations that are undeniable. I worked in a methadone clinic. So on the other hand, we only accepted cash. Just prove your point. This was in Lower Alabama, LA, Lower Alabama. And we had a group, I don't want to give too much away, but we had a group that traveled from an area in Florida and hit a Florida clinic, then hit our clinic, and then I think went to New Orleans and hit that clinic because it was a couple hours away. And they hit 3 clinics, and because they traveled, we gave them 6 takeout doses. So they would dose and take 100 milligrams of methadone. Then they would get 6 bottles to put in there. They had to have a lockbox. They had to pay
cash, and it was like $11 a bottle, $10 a bottle back then. So they were paying us, that cash and putting those bottles in. And they were hitting 3 clinics. We found all this out later, of course. But then I remember us drug testing them, and they had, urine to falsify their drug tests so that they wouldn't get busted. And finally we caught them, and I forget how. I mean, the guy like really got violently angry at me. We busted him, and that meant he had to come to the clinic every day. Well, they started coming to the clinic every day, which was several hours to build back up to get their take homes. But they were diverting is what they call it. Those 6 takeouts that they got, they were diverting those in our parking lot or in New Orleans or wherever they were going. They were selling, but they had to bring the bottles back. So like that was the deal. When you came back, you had to present your 6 old bottles that you used to the nurse, and then you'd get 6 new bottles. You have to take one in front of them, but 100 milligrams is pretty strong.
It is.
And so they were out selling this and making, if you're getting 100 milligrams, you're getting $1 milligram back then. They were getting $600. And this is in the 90s. So $600 went a lot further than it does now.
Yeah.
They were getting $600 times 3. So they were getting $1,800 a week, just driving. And of course they're going to drive a few hours, kill a day. And this was their life and their business. And the line of people, to take the methadone, and you're right, people are dope sick in the lines. And I lived that. I worked in the methadone clinic for 3 or 4 years, and it was eye-opening to me to see the depravity and the hopelessness. That's what broke my heart. But here's what we did at my methadone clinic. I don't often say this, but we started underground Bible study. Nice. So we were a private company, and I was going through the book of Genesis with a group, and we went through it in about 1.5 years. And every week we'd go through and talk about, recovery, 12-step principles tied in with the Bible and da-da-da. Back then I was all into that. I'm not anymore, but we were teaching the Bible mainly. And that's when we actually did a foot washing. We had a wedding. We had a picnic. We did all this stuff. It was really neat at the clinic. And if my boss had found out, I would have been fired because it was an underground Bible study. And I was so young. I mean, I was in my 20s. I didn't really think about getting fired or anything, for doing a Bible study. But the head of the company loved it. He's like, I don't know what's going on at your clinic, but we hear good things and da 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 da. So the president loved me. He would send me gifts to the kids whenever we had a baby, and he would send me gifts and stuff. And then my immediate boss, she hated me. She was afraid I was going to get her job, which I didn't want, but she was afraid, and she was always looking for a reason to get rid of me. But she could, God protected me during that season. But I digress. But it does remind me, like it takes me back. And the setting of these episodes are in the 1996 to 2006, about a 10-year span there, and we lived this out, you and I, kind of differently, but I really appreciate your insights. I did a little research on Arthur Sackler. He was a psychiatrist, so this isn't in the episode, but he was a psychiatrist from NYU who researched mental disorders. And in 1952 he purchased Purdue Frederick, which is now Purdue Pharma, and I think they're even rebranding it, giving it a different name now after all the legal mess and lawsuits and stuff they've had. But the MS Contin system was, developed by them. And then also in 1980, the FDA announced a label change to Valium, which you mentioned is in the benzodiazepine family, and a statement that it is not intended for, and they quote, the stress of everyday life. Well, 1980, they'd already made their $140 million, whatever it was, in the 70s and late 60s on this drug. Well, the FDA came out, too late, I just,
Rolling Stones had already written a song about it. You know the song?
No, what song was
Running
that?
for the shelter of your mother's little helper. You ever heard
I
that song?
want to. Yeah, no, I don't know.
Come
I'm a
on, you can
Christian.
admit to the audience you listen to the Rolling Stones all the time.
I'm a Christian. I did listen to Rolling Stone song in last week.
Yeah,
So
I don't know for a fact, but I'm pretty sure that song there, she's running for the shelter of her mother's little helper is talking about taking benzos during the day.
Yeah. What song is that? Do you know the name? No.
No, I'll look it up.
Yeah. I want to do some more podcasts on music and lyrics. We were driving to Florida. You drove to Florida too. We both kind of went to Florida about the same time for different reasons, didn't see each other, but we listened to a song called Whiskey Glasses. Have you heard of that song? It's a country music song. I'm not a big country music person, but we were flipping through the stations and there's a song, and you got to read the lyrics. Like he's like, I need to look at life through whiskey glasses. Isn't that clever? Well, what's he mean?
Yeah.
I'm pulling up the lyrics now. Where is it? Oh man, I have a lot of windows open. Uh, whiskey glasses. Where is it? Oh, here it is. He says, pour me another drink because I don't want to feel a thing. No more. Hell nah. I just want to sip till the pain wears off. Pour me another round. Line them up and knock them down. Two more, let's go. Because I ain't never hurt like this before. Don't want to think about her or wear a ring without her. Don't want to hit the karaoke bar. Can't sing without her. So make them drink strong because, brother, she's gone. And if I'm ever going to move on, I'm going to need some whiskey glasses. And he talks, and it's clever, like, like glasses, but these are whiskey glasses. And so he's kind of paralleling, that whole thing. And, but it's interesting to me, like this is an honest thing he's saying about, I'm turning to this liquid for pain, to relieve my emotional pain. And that's what you just said about Betsy in this character in this Dopesick is she's now moved from I need the pill because of my back injury to now I need the pill in a greater way because I'm building up tolerance and I'm withdrawing and I need more of this medication and I'm just doing it now because I'm seeking out the high or maintenance or whatever you want to call it. So
and that last scene, this last thing I'll say about it is when it shows her violently throwing up, taking the pills, and then sitting back in the camper and getting in complete euphoria, all within a very short amount of period of time. That's how powerful that stuff was. You could go from violently ill with taking your pills, and I mean that's taking them orally. Imagine if you were like me, someone that broke them down and broke them down and put them in a syringe and injected them. Happened in seconds. You went from violently ill to total euphoria in seconds.
Yeah.
The song, the Rolling Stone song, is literally called "Mother's Little Helper." Listen to the says. Kids are different today. I hear every mother say, "Mother needs something today to calm her down." And though she's not really ill, there's a little yellow pill. She goes running for the shelter of her mother's little helper.
Huh. What year did that come out? I'm looking that up. Let's see.
Oh,
Released July 2nd, 1966.
There you go. I think the yellow volume was 20 was a so the blue one was 10 milligrams. So I think that's a 2.5 is yellow.
Yeah, what a drag it is getting. Yeah. You can go to websites that tell you what the song means or what they think it means and all of that. But yeah, you're right on with this. Oh man, this, as we talked about this before we went live, I was like, I don't know if we're going to have 20 minutes worth, 30 minutes. Here we've probably been an hour.
Hey, look, this is part of our history. This is going to be ongoing. Look at it right now. I mean, in 1999, ladies and gentlemen, 1999, overdose deaths were under 20,000.
Mm.
And this medication was on the market. What is the overdose death today? It's over 100,000 people.
Right.
That's insane. And so there's a lot going on here that I think is worthy talking about. And what do they show us at the end? The granddaddy oxy, the 80 milligram is coming to market.
Boom.
And oxy 80s are a thing of myth and legend. I mean, people still talk about the oxy 80s.
Oxy 80s. Yeah. 10 to 20, 20 to 40. And then 40 milligrams leads to doubling it to these oxy 80s.
Single oxy 80 pills. I'll never, I have taken oxys before. I'll never forget the first time I took an 80. Pooh, buddy. Yeah.
All right. For another episode, cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Jim will tell us how it feels. No, we won't get into that. We don't want to trigger anybody.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, thank you. This is it's always sticky to talk about these kind of things, but I appreciate your bravery and willingness to do it. And I think it's important that we talk about some of these issues because this is still going on today. And
hey, I appreciate I was set free from this by Christ, and I'm able to talk about it today.
Amen. That's what we'll end on. Thank you, brother. Take care and God bless.
God bless.